So we've got some breaking news, and so in this video we're going to be talking about the whole Dominic Cummings saga. We're going to be looking at the fact that the police said that he did breach the lockdown, the timeline, some reactions and analysis, and also some Laura Kuenssburg got burned by this whole story. It's phenomenal what Dominic Cummings has managed to do in such a short space of time. So, look, according to Durham police, Dominic Cummings did breach coronavirus lockdown guidelines, and so they're saying that by him going to Durham, he was wrong. Also, the 50-mile journey to Bernard Castle was wrong as well. And so Mr. Cummings thought he acted lawfully when he went on a 260-mile journey from London to Durham to self-isolate on his parents' farm. And the fact that he went there despite being infectious and possibly infecting other people on his journey by stopping off anywhere to go for toilet or wherever shows what this man is like. The force said that it was a minor breach because he didn't break social distancing, but at the same time, it shows you the contempt of a person who gave the advice of stay at home regardless, unless you have to go shopping or get medicine. And if you're infected, then you definitely have to stay at home. You cannot go outside. And so if we go here to the timeline, key dates and guidance. So here's the 23rd of March. The Prime Minister tells the UK public they must stay at home. People warned, do not meet your friends or family members that you do not live with. Those with symptoms have been told to self-isolate. So his wife had symptoms. He had symptoms. It's like, what I'm going to do is, I'm not going to self-isolate right now. I'm going to go all the way to Durham from Islington. That's where he lives. And so 27th of March, Cummings is seen running out of 10 Downing Street because his wife said that she's got symptoms and she felt really ill. Guidance: if Mr. Cummings believed his wife may have had the coronavirus, the guidance was all other house members who remain well must stay at home and not leave the house for 14 days. So he didn't do that because he drove all the way to Durham. So in the evening, Mr. Cummings went on to explain, that evening I returned home, discussed the situation with my wife. She was ill. She might have had COVID, but they didn't have a test. She didn't have a cough or a fever. But a lot of the people that worked with the Prime Minister did get coronavirus. We know Matt Hancock got it as well. So later that day, Mr. Cummings drove to Durham with his family despite being ill at midnight. So he was worried that if he and his wife got seriously ill, who would look after their child? His wife was on the edge about whether she could do it. And so if we look here, the guidance, the government did say that there were some caveats of if you have children to look after, then there are some things that you could do. However, other government advice did not contain this caveat, such as the leaflet drawn up at the end of March to be sent to every home, nor did the government page on essential travel. Essential travel does not include visits to second homes, whether for isolation purposes or holidays. People must remain in their primary residence. So here, he's clearly broken the guidelines there. Mr. Cummings says he woke up in pain and clearly had COVID symptoms. So he got it. So that's what he thinks. He hasn't got tested for it or an antibody test. A number 10 source confirmed Mr. Cummings had developed the symptoms as well as symptoms of the virus and was self-isolating at home, which we know was a lie. The Durham police spoke to the father of Dominic Cummings, who confirms that his son and family were present at the property. During that night, Mr. Cummings' 4-year-old son threw up and they called an ambulance. Accompanied by Mr. Cummings' wife. Mr. Cummings could barely stand up, so he's very ill at this situation. So that shows you how bad it was for him. So after being taken to the hospital, Mr. Cummings' son woke up the next day having recovered. He was tested for coronavirus and his mother was with him at the hospital, despite the fact that she also would be infectious. She went to the hospital. According to Mr. Cummings, there were no taxis, so he drove to the hospital. Him being infectious as well, picked him up and returned home. He didn't have any contact with anybody on this short trip, but it's not clear whether he actually had a mask or anything like that. Guidance: people with symptoms that may be caused by coronavirus and who do not require hospital treatment are told they must remain at home until they are well. And so Cummings' argument is he went there so originally he said he went there so his parents could look after his 4-year-old, and then he changes to his sister. So why didn't his sister go pick them up from the hospital? This guy, he makes no sense. At some point during the week, April 6th, Cummings discussed his decision to travel to Durham with the Prime Minister. When we were both sick and in bed, he said, I mentioned to him what I've done. Unsurprisingly, given the condition we're in, neither of us remember the conversation in any detail. So, he cannot remember what he said to the Prime Minister. Mr. Cummings said, after I started to recover on the second, one day in the second week, I tried to walk outside. He confirmed he walked into woods owned by his father, and it was at that point he was seen by passers-by. but his family had no interaction with them. So this man is still infectious here because the World Health Organization says you should stay isolated 14 days even after you stop showing symptoms. And so this man's still infectious, going outside into the woods. Advice concerning outdoor exercise changed during the second week. In April, Mr. Cummings and his father walked in the woods. So here he breached lockdown advice again because he went outside on a walk instead of self-isolating anyways. This is unbelievable. Believing he had recovered by this day, albeit feeling weak and exhausted, still infectious, Mr. Cummings sought expert medical advice. Who are these experts who told you could go back to work? These medical experts have broken World Health Organization guidelines as well by telling him this. Mr. Cummings drives to Barnard Castle, about 25 miles from his parents' home, with his wife and child. He explained this was done to test his eyesight. Not to mention, he forgot to mention that it was his wife's birthday on that day, and that's probably why they went, to prepare himself for the long drive home. And so here we've got a guy who posted this, have you been drinking? Yes, but I was only checking to see if I was too pissed to drive. That's basically what he's done here. And so 13th, he travels back to London. 14th, Mr. Cummings is seen in Downing Street. So this guy, he's still potentially infectious. He's in Downing Street, infecting potentially other people. 5 days after being in London, the Observer and Mirror report that Cummings had been again seen in Durham by an unnamed witness, but he said he didn't return. And that evidence on his phone proves this. He didn't show us what the evidence was. So here we can see a timeline of Cummings blatantly breaching the guidelines and potentially the law, and we also see that the police also said he did breach guidelines. And so here we've got Robert Peston talking about Cummings' explanation to his colleagues about why he apparently broke down the rules. The lockdown rules is pretty extraordinary. When him and his wife went down with COVID-19, they feared they would not be well enough to look after their small boy. So Cummings, already ill, drove all the way to Durham so that his lad could be looked after by his parents. What's odd is that he was not deterred by the fear that his parents, who knew they would have his parents would have been at high risk because they're old, could be infected by his son. And so Cummings potentially could have killed his parents by getting them to look after his son, who could have also had coronavirus, which is just crazy. And so here we go to the reactions of some of the Tory MPs who essentially had to sell out their souls for this man. The circumstances have been explained. The guidance was followed. All of this stuff. Gove saying caring for your wife and child is not a crime. He followed the guidelines, even though the police have said he didn't. It's reasonable and fair to ask for an explanation. It's been provided. 2 parents with coronavirus were anxiously taking care of their young son. It's wrong to politicise it. So all these guys have essentially sold out to protect Cummings, and apparently they're not happy about it. And she's the journalist who broke the original story. And here's our AG trying to do her best impression of Bill Barr, saying that protecting one's family is what any good parent does. And in order for him to protect his family, he drove all the way to Durham when he didn't have to. And it shows you he could have infected more people. And so the Prime Minister saying, he regrets the confusion and anger that people feel. And so again, Boris Johnson is not taking any responsibility for what's happened. He's not going to sack him. He's saying, I regret that you feel angry and confused at the situation. What a clown. And so he's back to Cummings, saying that in every respect he acted responsibly, legally and with integrity. This is Boris Johnson. And so we know that the police said, no, he didn't. And so, Boris Johnson's best argument is to tell people to move on. Stop talking about this. It's not a big deal. And let's talk about something else. And it's just such a weak defence. And Boris saying, I spoke to Cummings, what he did was the right thing. Why don't you guys listen to me? It's very Trumpian, this reaction. And so here we go back to Peston. Peston asking the question to Matt Hancock, saying that, Matt, you and your wife had coronavirus. Why didn't you drive somewhere else to go get childcare? And then Matt Hancock saying that, he had childcare already. So why didn't Cummings have access to childcare? This is the government's top advisor. He could have got help in London. He also has a family member who lives in London who could have helped him. But he chose not to. He chose to drive all the way to Durham. And Matt Hancock essentially Robert Peston couldn't ask a follow-up question because Matt Hancock cut him off. And so here we have Rachel Venables tweeting about what Yvette Cooper did. And Yvette Cooper did something very intelligent here, where she trapped Boris Johnson to giving crappy answers. So Yvette Cooper asked, what is the message to parents who fall sick now? To stay at home unless there's a threat to life, or is the message to travel where you have a support network? And Boris Johnson said the advice is clear: stay at home. So Yvette Cooper goes all in. Here's the problem: you're trying to protect Dominic Cummings. You are sending your ministers out to say fudgy things to not incriminate him when you are putting your political concerns ahead of public health for people who have COVID. And Boris Johnson's reaction: stop playing party politics. This is political ding dong. And so what she did basically is to make Boris Johnson try and say that, well, you should stay at home. But Dominic Cummings didn't do that. And so essentially Bojo the Wonder Clown got played once again. And so here we've got the reaction of this shill, Tom Harewood. This is about the scientist who got caught meeting his lover. The man responsible for locking everyone up has been ignoring the rules and has ignoring the rules he told us all to follow. Prick. And now he's got, the row has never been about a drive that appears to be within the letter of the lockdown law, which is wrong. This is about obtaining the scalp of someone so much of the media has always hated. So this is Tom the shill Harewood. And here we've got Julia Hartley-Brewer saying that she couldn't see her 77-year-old mum who had a heart attack in December because of the coronavirus and lockdown. She's saying, I hadn't seen my mother since late January until 2 days ago. So excuse me if I'm beyond bloody incandescent at what Dominic Cummings did. And she's right to be angry, just as many other people are saying that Dominic Cummings did the right thing as a father, to look after his family when people have not seen their family in months, had to couldn't say goodbye in their final moments. People had to die alone because we were told that this was the best thing to do for the country. And there was the boy who was his funeral. He couldn't have any of his family members. And you can see why people are angry about this, and rightfully so. Dominic Cummings blatantly broke the guidelines, and he broke his own message of stay at home. And you can see why people are angry about this. It's not a left-right issue. It's not a Brexit, not a Remainer issue. This is a guy who is a government top advisor and broke the rules. And we'll keep going here. The civil service put out a tweet saying, arrogant and offensive. Can you imagine having to work with these truth twisters? And this tweet was subsequently deleted. But for the civil service Twitter account to tweet something like this, it's just madness. And we'll go to our final bit of the story. Laura Kuenssburg proves that her source is actually Dominic Cummings and proves how much of a shill and a clown she is. Spokeswoman, not journalist. So this is within about 30 minutes of the original tweet of Pippa, the journalist who broke the story. So if we go here, 8:01, 22nd of May, this is when the story was broken, right? Within less than half an hour, we have Laura Kuenssburg saying her source says the trip was within guidelines as Cummings went to stay with his parents so they could help with childcare while he and his wife were ill. So the only person her source could have been is Dominic Cummings because of how quick she got the story out, right? And then we've got this one. Again, she doubles down on this. Prime Minister's chief advisor did travel from London to County of Durham during the lockdown when he and his wife had the coronavirus to stay in a separate building at his family's farm. A source close to him confirms this has to have been Dominic Cummings or his wife, purely because of how quick she managed to get how quickly she managed to get these tweets out. Source says it's not true that he was spoken to by police, and Laura Kuenssburg in her infinite wisdom didn't actually read the article properly because the story says the police spoke to the family, not the man, but they did investigate him, and they are investigating him, and they found Dominic Cummings to have breached the lockdown rules. So Laura Kuenssburg proving herself to be an absolute clown. And here we have another person, Tim. The journalists defending Cummings tonight are largely the same ones who get their stories from him. That's how it works. And Owen Jones agreeing with him, saying that this is the case. And we can tell by the fact that Laura Kuenssburg got these tweets out so quickly. She got a statement from a source within half an hour. That's insane levels of speed right now, and we know that her source was wrong. On a purely, this is what I've enjoyed most about this. On a purely practical note, beautiful to see the Mirror plus the Guardian completely and utterly outplay a group of people who think they know how the media works. The decision to hold off a day or two was masterclass in good journalism. Give them the rope and see what they do with it, and that's what happened. They broke the original story of him going to Durham, waited for some reactions, essentially. Throughout one of the greatest feints I've ever seen, Israel Adesanya levels of feints here, and then the Conservative Party bit on that feint, and boom, you got the second story came out about him going to Banner Castle, and it makes all of those guys look like clowns, the ones that defended him. And on that note, I'm going to end it there. Let me know what you guys think in the comments below. Do you think that he did the wrong thing? Do you think Cummings did the right thing? Do you think that the Tories are right to defend him to the hilt, essentially, to the very end? Or do you think that they should have just sacked him or asked him to resign? Let me know what you guys think in the comments below, and hopefully I'll see you in the next one.